The city of Los Angeles in the late 1940s shimmered with both the allure of Hollywood glamour and the dark undercurrents of post-war disillusionment. Neon signs flickered along Sunset Boulevard, and the promise of a new dawn filled the air. Yet amid the glitz and dreams, a chilling secret lurked, a mystery that would forever change the fabric of the city. In the depths of a warm Southern California night, Elizabeth Short, known to many as the Black Dahlia, became the center of a brutal enigma that still haunts the collective memory. Elizabeth Short was a woman of contrasts, a spark of life against a backdrop of harsh realities. Born in 1924 in Dorchester, Massachusetts, her early years were spent chasing an elusive American dream. The whispers of Hollywood had always reached her small town like distant music, promising a stage where beauty and ambition converged. With her striking features, a radiant smile, and a penchant for vintage glamour, Elizabeth was more than a pretty face. She was an emblem of hope and possibility in a world that was slowly healing from the scars of war. In Los Angeles, Elizabeth arrived with a suitcase of dreams and a heart full of determination. She sought the bright lights of the silver screen, the allure of starlets who could command both attention and adoration. Yet beneath the surface of aspiration lay a life of hardship. She took on odd jobs, worked in modest boarding houses, and wandered the streets at night, always with her eyes fixed on a future that, at times, seemed just beyond her grasp. Even as she navigated the city's bustling boulevards and back alleys, Elizabeth cultivated an inner life filled with secret hopes. In her modest apartment on West Pico Boulevard, she kept a small vanity adorned with photographs of glamorous film stars and handwritten notes about her dreams. Every morning, she would rise before dawn, carefully applying her makeup with practiced precision, as if each brushstroke was a step toward the life she longed to live. In quiet moments by the window, she would watch the city stir to life, an urban tapestry of ambition, regret, and possibility. Los Angeles was a city of dazzling contrasts. By day, it basked in the glow of promise, a city rebuilt from the remnants of war, a metropolis pulsing with creative energy. By night, however, shadows stretched long, and secrets hid in the neon-lit darkness. It was in those nocturnal hours that the darker side of the city emerged, a world of broken dreams, desperation, and silent tragedies. Elizabeth was no stranger to the city's dual nature. She frequented small diners on Melrose Avenue, where the clatter of dishes and low hum of conversation mingled with the lingering scent of cigarette smoke. At night, she walked along palm-lined streets, her high heels clicking on the pavement as if marking time in a quiet, relentless rhythm. In those moments, she felt both the vibrancy and the isolation of Los Angeles, a city that could be simultaneously warm and indifferent, kind and cruel. Her encounters were as varied as the city itself. There were nights spent laughing with newfound friends at dimly lit clubs, where jazz and blues spilled from open windows. There were also evenings when the silence of her own apartment echoed with unfulfilled longing, and when the faces in the crowds were as anonymous as the stars scattered across the night sky. In every encounter, Elizabeth carried with her a spark, a hope that somewhere, somehow, she might finally become more than just a shadow in the city's vast, indifferent landscape. It was a cool January evening in 1947 when fate began to weave a darker tale. The city, still recovering from the weight of its wartime past, was caught between celebration and sorrow. In the neon glow of downtown Los Angeles, Elizabeth moved through the night with her characteristic grace, a woman whose dreams had outpaced the harsh realities of life on the margins. That night, like so many before, she had plans that were both simple and profound. Elizabeth had met with a friend, a fellow hopeful who shared stories of auditions and silver screen glories. They had agreed to meet at a small cafe on Main Street, a cozy spot where the clink of coffee cups was a counterpoint to the laughter of strangers. For a brief while, the promise of companionship and shared dreams lent a shimmer to the dark hours. But as the evening wore on, the paths of fate began to diverge. Elizabeth, who had stepped out alone from the cafe after a brief conversation, wandered the quiet back streets of the city. The cool air brushed against her skin as she walked, a reminder that even in Los Angeles, the night could be unexpectedly cold. Her steps carried her toward an unassuming building in a quieter part of town, a structure that, like many others, bore the moss of both hope and despair. Inside that building, in a narrow alley where the neon glow faded into obscurity, the tragic mystery of the Black Dahlia would soon be born. Elizabeth, radiant in her determination and vulnerability, vanished into the shadows. Her final hours remained shrouded in uncertainty, a series of whispered rumors, half-remembered conversations, and the unyielding silence of a case that has defied resolution. It was early on a misty February morning when the unimaginable was revealed to the city. The body of Elizabeth Short was found in a vacant lot near the neighborhood of Leimert Park, a grisly tableau that would soon capture the nation's attention. The discovery was made by an early jogger whose routine run took a horrifying turn when the still figure lying in the dewy grass came into view. The scene was macabre, a stark contrast to the vibrant promise of the city just hours before. The body was posed, almost as if in a grotesque tribute to the glamour that Elizabeth had once embodied. The wounds were severe and bafflingly precise, and the manner of the dismemberment would prompt countless questions from detectives, reporters, and the public alike. As word spread through the corridors of police stations and newsrooms, Los Angeles became a city both united in shock and divided by theories. The case quickly assumed a life of its own, a puzzle whose pieces were scattered across interviews, crime scene photos, and speculative whispers. The media, hungry for a sensational story, dubbed her the Black Dahlia, a name that resonated with a blend of beauty and darkness, hope and tragedy. Detectives soon swarmed the scene, their expressions grim as they documented every detail. In the sterile light of an autopsy room, forensic experts pieced together the evidence, a process that would become an obsession for some and a maddening labyrinth for others. The crime scene was replete with contradictions, the careful, almost artistic mutilation of a body that had once captivated hearts, the seemingly deliberate arrangement of remains that evoked both horror and a macabre sense of order. Within the police department, debates flared. Some officers believed that the brutality of the crime was born of personal rage, a vendetta against a woman who had dared to dream too brightly. Others suspected that the act was the work of a calculating mind, someone who had studied both the glamour and the cruelty of Hollywood's underbelly. Rumors circulated that Elizabeth had crossed paths with dangerous individuals, the shadowy figures of a city where glamour and grit collided, leaving lives in ruin. Investigators combed through Elizabeth's past, speaking with neighbors, friends, and acquaintances who recalled the woman with both tenderness and uncertainty. One former roommate, a quiet girl with trembling eyes, recalled evenings filled with hopeful chatter about making it big, about escaping the small world they inhabited. Another, a bartender at a local club, mentioned that Elizabeth had once been seen laughing with a man whose eyes held a darkness that contrasted sharply with her own luminous hope. In the midst of these interviews, details emerged that painted a picture of a life filled with both brightness and shadow. Elizabeth had been known to frequent small art galleries in downtown Los Angeles, to attend gatherings where creative souls gathered to share their visions. She once confided in a friend about her belief that beauty and tragedy were two sides of the same coin, a notion that, in hindsight, lent an eerie poignancy to her fate. When the news of Elizabeth Short's discovery spread, Los Angeles, and indeed the nation, was plunged into a state of collective shock. Newspapers splashed lurid headlines across front pages. Radios, once a comforting companion, now carried the somber report of a beauty lost and a mystery unsolved. The public was captivated, horrified, and strangely morbidly curious about the case. The juxtaposition of her glamorous nickname, the Black Dahlia, with the grotesque reality of her end left a scar on the cultural landscape. As the investigation deepened, the city seemed to oscillate between disbelief and a desperate need for answers. Public vigils were held. Flowers were left at the scene where her body had been discovered, a vacant lot that, for a time, became a shrine to a life interrupted. The people of Los Angeles, many of whom had once dreamed of a better future in the City of Angels, now found themselves questioning how beauty and ambition could be so brutally destroyed. Detectives worked around the clock, and theories abounded. Some believed that Elizabeth's association with unsavory characters in the underbelly of Hollywood had drawn the attention of a vengeful predator. Others whispered that her murder was the result of a complex conspiracy, an interplay of jealousy, corruption, and the dark secrets that hide behind the bright facade of Tinseltown. Each theory added another layer to the mystery, further entangling a case that had already become larger than life. Despite the relentless efforts of law enforcement and the relentless scrutiny of the media, the true story behind Elizabeth Short's death remained elusive. Each piece of evidence, each fragment of testimony, raised more questions than it answered. The precise motivations of the killer were obscured by layers of deceit and misdirection, a labyrinth of red herrings that only deepened the enigma. Some investigators posited that the case was a mirror, reflecting the darker sides of post-war America, a period marked by both exuberant optimism and underlying disillusionment. Others believed that the answer lay hidden in the very contradictions that defined Elizabeth's life, her undeniable beauty and her tragic vulnerability, her dreams of stardom juxtaposed with the harsh realities of survival on the fringes of society. In the corridors of the LAPD, debates continued well into the following decades. For every theory that found a semblance of evidence, another emerged, each one a stark reminder that the Black Dahlia was more than a single story. She was a symbol of a city struggling to reconcile its public glamour with its private sorrows, a beacon whose light had been extinguished in the most brutal of ways.